If you think you know the story of Lucifer's rebellion, think again. Most people picture chaos erupting in heaven, a flash of pride, a fall from grace. But there's a crucial piece often missing from the narrative. A detail so profound it will challenge everything you thought you knew about cosmic power, divine loyalty, and the very nature of spiritual warfare. We rarely hear about Michael, the Archangel, during that initial, cataclysmic moment, and that silence. It is the biggest deception of all. Imagine heaven, perfect light, unbroken harmony, an eternal symphony of worship. Every angel, every being, bathed in the radiant love of God. But then, a flicker, a whisper, a thought of, why not me? In the heart of the most brilliant angel, Lucifer, the morning star. That seed of pride began to fester, slowly at first, then rapidly, like a spreading poison. It wasn't an explosion. It was an insidious corruption, a cosmic cancer that threatened to consume paradise itself. And as this darkness began to stir, a question hangs heavy in the celestial air. Where was Michael? Most assume he was a stunned bystander, perhaps paralyzed by the sheer horror of rebellion in a perfect realm. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Michael wasn't on the sidelines. He was never a passive observer. To truly grasp the magnitude of Lucifer's treason, you must understand who Michael truly was, and why his presence, even if unmentioned in common retellings, was absolutely pivotal. Michael was not just an angel. He was the Archangel, a title brimming with immeasurable authority and sacred responsibility. Think of him as God's supreme general, cloaked not in armor of steel, but in celestial light, entrusted with the very defense of the Most High's throne. The Bible references him by name 5 times, a rare honor that underscores his immense significance. Jude 1-9 specifically names him Michael, the Archangel. Daniel 10:13 calls him one of the chief princes. This wasn't some minor deity. This was a warrior of unparalleled standing, deeply connected to God's divine order. His very name, Michael, means who is like God. This wasn't just a label, it was a living declaration. A thunderous question that challenged pride, pierced delusion, and affirmed his unwavering reverence and submission to the Almighty. He stood in the innermost courts of eternity, where God's voice thundered with authority and whispered with intimacy. His strength wasn't just physical might, it was forged in unblemished loyalty, in the very presence of pure holiness. So, as Lucifer's insidious whispers began to echo through heaven's perfect halls, Michael was not surprised. He was not unprepared. He was forged for this very moment. He saw the subtle shift in Lucifer's once noble heart, the slow turning towards self-adoration. He felt the tremor of betrayal long before others understood the scope of the coming catastrophe. He was a guardian, a commander, deeply intertwined with the fabric of divine justice and order. His entire being was a testament to the truth of his name. Who is like God? Are you ready to truly see this story? Are you willing to confront your own assumptions about power, betrayal, and unwavering faith? Because what unfolds next isn't just ancient history. It is a mirror reflecting the battles you face today. What would Deity do if you were caught in the middle of a heavenly war, watching the unthinkable unfold? This wasn't a sudden explosion of malice. It began with a whisper, a subtle shift, a proud glance in the mirror of eternity. Lucifer, once the morning star, Isaiah 14:12, began to see himself not as a servant, but as a rival. He grew intoxicated by his own beauty, his own wisdom, his own magnificent light. And then he dared to ask the question Michael would never conceive. Why not me? He no longer wanted to worship, he wanted to be worshipped. This isn't just ancient lore. It is a profound lesson in how evil germinates. It often starts small, an unchecked thought, a festering discontent. Lucifer didn't keep his ambitions to himself. He became the cosmic deceiver, moving from angel to angel, weaving intricate lies, wrapping them in charisma and false promises of greater freedom, deeper enlightenment. Why should we serve forever? He might have whispered, what if there is more? Does God truly deserve all the glory? He cast doubt where there had been certainty, sowed discord where there had been perfect harmony. Can you imagine the heartbreak? The sudden, shattering fracture of eternal brotherhood. Revelation 12:4 chillingly tells us the result. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. 1/3 of heaven's angels, beings created in the pure light of truth, once full of worship and wonder, chose to follow Lucifer into spiritual darkness. Think about the devastation. Friends turning into traitors, brothers choosing rebellion over their creator. Heaven, once a seamless tapestry of light, began to fray at the edges, teetering on the brink of ultimate collapse. But here's where Michael's story truly ignites. He wasn't caught off guard. He had watched Lucifer's pride bloom like a poison flower. He had discerned the subtle shifts in his once noble brother. And when the rebellion finally erupted, Michael didn't hesitate. He didn't wait for orders. He didn't shrink back in confusion or despair. He was ready. His readiness wasn't based on physical force, but on absolute clarity of conviction. Michael knew God. He knew his character, his holiness, his unassailable truth, and he knew who Lucifer was becoming. A twisted parody of the glory he once held. That certainty gave Michael a strength that rebellion could not touch. As heaven quaked and angels chose sides, Michael rose, not with fear, but with an unquenchable fire of conviction, with the authority of one who had always remained true. Have you ever faced a moment where everything you believed in was challenged, where friends or institutions you trusted veered away from truth? Michael's unwavering stand shouts to us. Loyalty to truth is not always popular, but it is found always done right. What would that do when the line is drawn, and you have to choose between convenience and conviction? Would your heart break, or would you draw your sword of truth? Forget everything you think you know about war. This wasn't a clash of steel on stone, or armies locked in earthly combat. This was something far beyond human comprehension. A cosmic battle where light collided with darkness, where loyalty rose to confront absolute rebellion, and where creatures of power and beauty turned against each other in the ethereal skies of eternity. On one side stood Lucifer, the former morning star, now consumed by pride and ambition, transformed into Satan, the adversary. Behind him marched the rebel host, the 1/3 of heaven's angels he had seduced with promises of false freedom and stolen power. They wielded lies like blades and arrogance like shields. They fought with a fury born of delusion, convinced they had a chance against the Creator himself. And on the other side, Michael, radiant with divine authority, his countenance blazing with holy resolve. Behind him stood the faithful, those who still trembled in awe at God's glory, whose hearts still burned with pure devotion to the Creator of all things. The battle lines were drawn. The very fate of heaven, and perhaps all creation, hung in the balance. The Bible gives us a breathtaking glimpse of this otherworldly conflict in Revelation 12:7-8. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. Just imagine those words coming alive. What kind of war must it have been for God himself to let it be recorded in Scripture? The sound of thunderous wings beating against the celestial atmosphere. Voices crying out like rushing waters, flashes of divine energy. Angels like streaks of pure light darting through the heavens, clashing in a war of righteousness. And right in the center of it all was Michael, not watching from a distance, not commanding from the rear. He was leading from the front, fully engaged, fully aware that this was not just a fight for territory, but a battle for the very soul of heaven. Michael fought with all his might. Yes, but his true weapon wasn't strength. It was an unshakable, God anchored faith. Have you ever faced something so much bigger than yourself, yet you stood anyway? Because you knew God was with you. That was Michael. He fought not in his own name, but in the name of the one who reigns forever. Lucifer's forces were powerful, fierce, but they had forfeited heaven's light. They had abandoned truth. And in the end, no matter how intense their resistance, they could not overcome what they had lost. As the battle raged, the tide began to turn, not because Michael grew stronger, but because Lucifer's forces, severed from the source of all power, grew weaker with every clash of truth, with every strike of righteousness. The forces of rebellion were pushed back, slowly, inevitably. The outcome became undeniable. Can you feel the tension as the enemy is cornered, as arrogance gives way to despair? This wasn't just a victory. It was a profound revelation. The great war in heaven forever etched an eternal truth. Good is stronger than evil. Light will always drive out darkness. Not because it is louder or flashier, but because it is rooted in something unshakable, God himself. Michael's triumph wasn't just about casting Satan out. It was about proving, for all creation to witness, that faith defeats pride, that loyalty defeats rebellion, and that no matter how formidable evil may appear, it can never overcome a heart anchored in God. So when your moment of battle comes, when you are standing in the middle of chaos, betrayal, or fear, will you be like Michael? Will you fight with faith, knowing you are not alone? Because this ancient war in heaven wasn't just a moment in history. It is a living message for eternity, and that message still speaks to you now. What would Danton do if you stood beside Michael on the edge of that war? Would your faith hold firm or falter? The dust settled. The thunderous roar of celestial combat subsided. After an intense and all-consuming war that shook the very foundations of heaven, the moment of ultimate truth arrived. Michael and the faithful angels emerged victorious. But this wasn't merely a triumph of strategy or sheer might. It was a divine victory, powered not by Michael's own strength alone, but by something infinitely greater, the empowering presence of God himself. Michael was clothed in heavenly authority, strengthened by the Creator's unwavering will. That divine empowerment transformed Michael into a force that darkness simply could not withstand. And then came the final confrontation. Can you feel the weight of that moment? Michael and Lucifer, two of the most powerful beings ever created, once comrades in light, now locked in a final clash of eternal consequence. The battlefield trembled as loyalty faced pride, truth faced lies, and unblemished light faced the shadow of ultimate betrayal. Michael didn't flinch. He stood, not in arrogance, but in absolute, unyielding faith. And Lucifer, the once radiant morning star, found himself utterly overwhelmed by the very power he had once worshipped. He could not stand against Michael, not because Michael was inherently greater, but because Michael stood fully, completely, and unshakably under God's authority. That is the key. Victory belongs to those who stand in alignment with heaven, no matter how fierce the enemy, no matter how overwhelming the odds. And then it happened, the unthinkable. Revelation 12:9 declares, "The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him." Picture it, Lucifer, once the most beautiful, now the most fallen, cast down like a blazing star ripped from the heavens. Along with him, a full third of the angelic host tumbled into darkness, lost forever. The skies of eternity were cleansed. Heaven breathed again, relief, yes, but also profound sorrow. To see a brother fall, to watch so many be lost, it must have brought a wave of grief, even in victory, because this wasn't just a military defeat. It was a spiritual tragedy of unimaginable proportions. How do you process watching someone who once stood beside you now crash into eternal exile? But that's where the next chapter begins. Lucifer, now Satan, The accuser, the deceiver, the enemy not just of God, but of humanity, was hurled down to earth. And that means the battle that began in heaven is not over. It continues here, right now, in your choices, in your thoughts, in your soul. Michael's story isn't just a tale of the past, it's a living call to action. It reminds us that the spiritual war is real, and it's happening all around us. But it also reminds us of something more powerful than fear. Good will always overcome evil. Light will always drive out darkness. And those who stand firm in God's truth, like Michael did, will never stand alone. So let me ask you, when the battle comes to your doorstep, whether it is doubt, temptation, fear, or external pressure, will you fight like Michael? Will you trust like Michael? Will you rise up in the armor of faith and refuse to let pride or deception steal your purpose? You've just uncovered some of the deepest mysteries surrounding Michael's role in Lucifer's rebellion. But don't stop here. The war may have started in heaven, but it continues in you. And the next chapter of this divine story, it might just be yours. His mission didn't end with a victory parade. Michael's fight wasn't a one-off event. As the dust of war settled in heaven and Satan was hurled to earth, Michael remained in position not just as a triumphant warrior, but as a vigilant guardian, an ever-watchful protector of God's people. This crucial truth often gets overlooked. The battle didn't conclude, it merely changed battlefields. And Michael's role didn't cease, it evolved. Throughout Scripture, Michael reappears during critical moments in human history, proving he is no passive observer. He is a divine defender, sent to stand by those who are faithful when the spiritual conflict around them becomes overwhelming. Consider the prophet Daniel. In a moment of deep distress, praying and fasting for understanding, an angelic messenger appears and says something remarkable in Daniel 10:13. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. Michael stepped in to break through a spiritual barrier, not with physical violence, but with overwhelming heavenly authority. He is even described in Daniel 12:1 as the great prince who protects your people, showing his unique and ongoing role in defending not just individuals, but entire nations aligned with God's purpose. Can you imagine that? While Daniel was praying on earth, there was intense warfare in the heavens, and Michael was actively battling for the breakthrough. How many times have Todd prayed and felt delayed, not realizing that in the unseen realm mighty angels like Michael might be fighting on your behalf? And his work isn't finished. In Revelation, Michael reemerges at the climax of history. He doesn't retire. He doesn't fade away into obscurity. He leads again, fighting against the final surge of evil. Revelation 12:7-9 shows him clashing once more with the dragon, making it clear that Michael's vigilance is not temporary. It is eternal. He remains active, alert, and entirely aligned with God's final plan of redemption. He embodies endurance, unwavering purpose, and a steadfast commitment to the truth. Michael's ongoing presence reveals a profound truth that many forget. The battle between good and evil is still happening, but now it plays out in the realm of human hearts and daily decisions. Not in cosmic skies, but in your home, your workplace, your conversations, and the quiet choices you make. Every time you choose integrity over compromise, forgiveness over hate, truth over lies, you are part of that same battle Michael fought. Every time you stand for what is right, you are aligning with the same spiritual forces that cast out Satan. So, what can we learn from his unwavering watchfulness? We learn to be spiritually awake. Michael doesn't relax because the threat seems quiet. He remains ready. That's a call to us. Don't wait for a crisis to grow your faith. Stay connected. Stay rooted. Stay aware. We learn to defend what truly matters. Michael doesn't fight for personal gain. He fights for God's people, God's purpose, and God's promises. Our Satatau protecting what God has entrusted to you. Your family, your calling, your values, your peace. We learn that endurance is part of obedience. Michael didn't stop after one victory. He continued. So should we. Faith isn't a one-time decision. It's a lifestyle of continued faithfulness. And perhaps most importantly, we learn that we are never alone. Even when the spiritual battle rages beyond our sight, heaven is watching and heaven is intervening. Michael's example calls out across the ages. Are you ready to be vigilant? Are you willing to fight for what is right, even when no one else sees? Will you stand guard over your values, your faith, and your purpose, even when it's hard? Because like Michael, you were not made to stand back and watch. You were made to rise, to God, to act. How will you respond to this call for eternal vigilance? This isn't just ancient history. Michael's story is a blueprint for Soti life, a mirror reflecting powerful truths that speak directly to your journey, your struggles, and your purpose. Michael wasn't just an angel of war. He was, and still is, a symbol of loyalty, courage, and unwavering faith in the face of overwhelming darkness. His battles echo in the battles you face every single day. You may not wield a celestial sword, but you are called to stand firm in your beliefs, to choose light over darkness, and to fight for the people and principles that truly matter. First, Michael teaches us the unshakable power of loyalty. When everything around him began to unravel, when a trusted friend like Lucifer, someone he once fought alongside, turned against their creator, Michael didn't waver. He stood his ground. How many times have Soti been pressured to compromise what you believe, just to fit in, just to avoid conflict? Michael's example shouts to us, stand firm. Loyalty to truth is not always popular, but it is always, eternally, undeniably right. Will you have the courage to speak up for what you know is right, even if it means standing alone? Second, Michael's faith wasn't just personal. It was anchored in something infinitely greater. He didn't charge into battle with arrogance or self-confidence. He knew that his strength had limits, but God's strength did not. That's where his courage came from. Revelation 12:10 calls this out. They triumphed by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Michael fought with divine backing, and so can you. When life throws its fiercest battles your way, are you leaning on your own fading strength, or are you trusting in the one who never fails? When you feel overwhelmed, will you pause, take a deep breath, and turn back to what you believe? Faith isn't about never struggling. It is about trusting God, even when you do. Third, Michael didn't become a leader in a moment. He was prepared long before the rebellion began. He had spent time in the presence of God, listening, learning, obeying. He wasn't just strong, he was spiritually trained. So when chaos came, he didn't panic. He responded with unwavering purpose. What if the trials you're facing tomorrow require the faith you're building today? Are you actively preparing your spirit, feeding your soul daily, or only reacting when things go wrong? Will you keep growing, even when you feel like you've heard it all? Fourth, Michael's leadership reveals something profoundly important. Strength is meant to serve others. In the midst of battle, Michael didn't just protect himself. He led, he encouraged, he protected others. He rallied the loyal angels, empowered them, gave them roles, and built unity in the face of devastating division. That's real leadership. Not domination, but service. Not control, but compassionate guidance. When others look to you in their time of fear or confusion, will they find someone grounded enough to guide them? Sometimes the best way to find strength is to offer it to someone else. Is there someone around you who's discouraged, lonely, or struggling? A simple act of kindness, a word of encouragement, a helping hand can change everything. Not just for them, but for you too. These aren't just nice ideas, they're battle-tested truths. You may not be fighting fallen angels, but you're still in a war. a war for your peace, your values, your identity, your future. And every day brings choices that shape the person you're becoming. Michael's example shows us what it means to stay strong and faithful, even when the world turns upside down. So, what kind of person will Saitat be when the pressure rises? Will you give in, or will you stand firm? Will you stay silent, or will you speak up? Will you run, or will you rise? Here's the profound truth: the same God who empowered Michael empowers you. The same light that shone through Michael can shine through you. You just have to say yes to it, to his truth, to his purpose. Carry this with you. Be bold in your convictions, tender in your love for others, and unshakable in your trust in God. The world needs more people who walk like Michael, with courage in their heart and heaven behind them. If this message has stirred your spirit, if something inside you burns for a deeper understanding, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to this channel and join a growing community of seekers, warriors, and believers who are hungry for truth and committed to standing for what is right. We release new videos twice a week to inspire, equip, and reveal the hidden wisdom of Scripture that too many have forgotten. And if you are ready to stand strong in your faith, declare it in the comments by typing 777 as a sign that you choose to walk in truth like Michael did. May you be blessed with clarity, strength, and peace as you walk the path God has set before you. And may Michael's story continue to remind you that you were never meant to live in fear, but to live in victory. Stay strong, stay faithful, and never forget, you are part of a greater story.